People are silently begging to be led. They really are. But the caveat is we only want to be led by somebody that we genuinely feel has our best interest at heart, not their own. And that's the boogaboo. Most people today are so concerned with self-interest. If you were my client, I would spend 4 hours just learning your origin story. I'd learn how you got there. I'd learn your values. I'd learn your belief system, all these things before I'd ever try to even advise you, because I can't advise you if I don't fully appreciate, understand, and respect you.
Danny, what can you tell me about today's guest?
All right, so on today's podcast, we have Jay Abraham.
Great.
So Matt, you remember the Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yeah.
You're speaking to somebody who's basically a walking encyclopedia. So this guy knows everything about business and marketing. So you and I had a conversation with Jay not long ago. We asked him one question and he took us down 3 hours of a crash course on business and marketing.
Yep.
So a little bit more about our guest. He's earned the nickname the $1 Billion Man and is one of Tony Robbins' longtime advisors. He's the founder and CEO of the Abraham Group. He's got decades of experience using insights from all the industries he's worked with. His whole thing is translating those things into different companies and businesses. I know listeners will walk away with great tangible advice after your conversation.
All right, everybody. This is PodCrash. For most listeners, I'm sure your reputation's kind of precede you, but just in case there is a couple young ones that don't know all the things you've done, what would you say, kind of elevator pitch on what you do and explain it?
I've got to dredge into my history because I haven't done it for a long time. I guess that I have a very unique ability to combine success approaches from outside an industry into hybrids. I've worked at 1,000 industries, Matt, not companies, and I've seen all kinds of higher, better, more profitable, safer, more rapid.
1,000 industries, not businesses, industries.
But I've been doing it for
Wow.
many decades. But I'm able to usually find ways to make what somebody's doing in their business, how they're doing it, where they're doing it, why they're doing it, and how it does better. And I can usually find hidden assets, overlooked opportunities, performing revenue activities, underutilized assets, relationships, resources, and command them to produce a lot more bottom line. I work on what I'll call the 10x bottom line moonshot as opposed to top line, and I've been very successful doing it on a worldwide basis for some very preeminent companies, and I've been able to advise and mentor a lot of iconic people, and have had a very colorful and a very fulfilling career. That's probably the best overview I can give you.
Love it. I can attest from just one, hour-long conversation with you, that breadth of experience has you cranking out ideas like a machine in just a few minutes. That experience shows in the way your mind works for sure. You've earned some nicknames even from some $1 Billion Man, advisor to advisors. How'd you earn those nicknames?
It's been calculated, and I didn't do it, the press did it, that I've contributed about $75 billion of profit increases on a worldwide basis in my career. So I got many nicknames. It was the 9 billion and the 75 billion, and we stopped calculating. And as far as advisor to advisors, I've just helped 300 or so of the top experts, authors, consultants, speakers over my career. So I've had influence over a lot of people, not as many young ones, truthfully, but everyone from Tony, Damon John, Brian Tracy, the late Stephen R. Covey, his son Stephen M.R. Covey, a lot of people like that I've had the good fortune of having an impact on.
That's amazing. Speaking of some of those names, Tony Robbins says about you that you're the guy he goes to for almost 35 years now whenever he wants to create a breakthrough.
Yeah.
When you looking at that relationship, how did that start? How'd you get to know him? Any short story you could share of why or how you
Sure.
help him break through?
Yeah, he and I basically met in 1991. I'm dating myself, and he was not doing business, and he wasn't doing financial literacy, and he wasn't doing longevity or restorative health. He was basically doing very, very unique and very powerful motivation and personal development, and he was doing a very complex and expensive program that was an integration of everything he did and a lot of other things, and it was not at the time doing well. And they asked me if I could look at it and try to come up with a breakthrough, and I was very fortunate I did, and it worked very well. And then he and I became very close, and I shared with him a lot of my principles, methodologies, particularly one that he really found appealing. There's the 3 ways to grow a business, and he started applying it both for his clients in different ways and for himself. And then he started seeing that I basically took to his database an offer that he'd never contemplated. I said I thought that a lot of his audience probably were successful entrepreneurs who had been driven to make a lot of money, and when they made a lot of money, they thought that alone was going to, release them from all the problems and the burdens of life, and that heaven would open and nirvana would flow, and it didn't happen. And they were probably drawn to him for some more meaningful reason, but I thought he had a huge representation of entrepreneurs in his database. He didn't really think that, so I asked to prove it to him, and I did a mailing to 20,000 of his people, and it cost us about 10 grand and brought in 9 million. And he got interested in business after that. So we've had a very interesting career together and differently. I've been very involved with him for a while. Then I didn't see him. Then we met up accidentally in Tokyo when I was there and he was there. And then I started doing some things, and he and I now do a 1 day together. Just he and I, we do it for his high end. It's called Platinum Partners and his Lions. And it's very fun because he's evolved to a very sophisticated level of business acuity that is very impressive. And I have to work very hard to keep up with him. But yeah, our career and our relationship goes back to 1991.
You were already pretty established then. He sought you out.
In my sector, so to speak, I was probably at the time, this was before the internet, when everybody was able to, to really use worldwide distribution. I was endorsed at the time by about 40 newsletters, by Entrepreneur Magazine, Success Magazine, The In-Flights, about every entrepreneurial and general business training company. I was working with people in Tokyo and China and Malaysia and the UK and Bali and Vietnam. So I was very well established in the entrepreneurial business growth sector back. I started way earlier than 91, so I've been doing it for a while, and I was doing very large seminars on a worldwide basis that were pretty expensive, and my reputation was very, very significant. We had done Entrepreneur Magazine and blown it up. We had done a bunch of newsletters and blown them up. I had done Icy Hot and blown it up. And so I had a pretty unique reputation early in the process.
Beyond just the client list, what do you think has been a key to Tony's success?
Well, 3 things. And I'll tell you what really endeared me to him. When we first met, after I'd helped him, but I hadn't met him, we talked. When we first met, he was going to interview me for an interview service he had. And I sent him, this is way before digital, I sent him 40 pages of summarization of my body of work. And I just wanted him to have a familiarity with it. And when we sat down to be interviewed, it was supposed to last an hour. He had made notes on not every page and not every paragraph, but every line. And the interview lasted from 2 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was just profoundly impressed with how prepared he was, how comprehensive he was, how curious he was, how respectful he was, but what a great advocator he was for his audience. And that endeared me to him, and it got me to really revere and respect the man. He's very dedicated. He's a very hard worker. But I think another thing that probably makes him profoundly successful, he is a world-class synthesizer. You've heard it. There are really no original thoughts, but there are a lot of original combinations. And he's masterful at synthesizing. And he's not a plagiarist. He's a synthesizer. And to his great credit, I've influenced countless people in my career the vast majority, tragically, have appropriated a lot of my body of work without acknowledgement. Tony actually fully and continually acknowledges my body of work when he introduces it, when he uses it. And he's got integrity that's very, very unique.
Interesting that you mentioned in the introduction here, you concentrate on the bottom line, not just the top line. But from a go get the top line perspective, marketing is an interesting thing. There's the businesses that can't afford it, and then there's the thought of maybe you can't afford not to do it. What do you feel about marketing in a business as far as the importance of it? How much of a necessity is it versus word of mouth, et cetera?
I'm going to give you a historic answer, not a singular answer. So when I started, I was known as a marketing genius. I don't know if I really was one, but I had a profound and a comprehensive and a very unique proprietary understanding of marketing inside and out as far as entrepreneurial marketing goes. And for many years, that's all I did. And then I started doing very unique seminars that explored a whole facet of different elements of a business. And I came to a conclusion that as important as marketing is, and it is very important as a front end driver of clients, initial sales, brand distinction, and superiority, it is a diminishing resource, meaning your ads will saturate, your competitors will emulate you, plagiarize you, innovate you. Media changes, they change the algorithms or they raise the price. Or if you're a company that markets and you have to go to a trade show and there's a COVID, you can't do it. And you have a lot of things that you don't have control over. And marketing is seen, and I used to think it was the be all and catch all. But Matt, I've come to the conclusion that more importantly is if you have a superior preemptive strategy, if you have a really great business model, if you have an absolutely kick-ass killer distribution channel sourcing network, if you have a better revenue approach, if you have a preemptive or a monopolistic advantage, if you have a whole network of partners sourcing for you and exposing you, that's far more enduring than marketing. But then good marketing becomes the cherry on the icing on the top of the sundae. But marketing is very important. Marketing is a key driver to what I'll call the front end of a business. And if you don't have a back end, it doesn't mean you shouldn't. We believe that everybody should find more ethical utility value in what they do, because acquiring your first transaction is the slowest, the hardest, the most expensive, the least profitable. And monetizing that goodwill and that connection and the integrity that comes from over delivering is relatively easy, and it's many times more profitable. So I'm giving you maybe a little an attention deficit answer, but I don't know if that makes sense or not.
It does. Maybe to get even more specific, you've given and commented on if a campaign is failing when it comes to marketing, it's either because of the hook, the story, or the offer. And so, maybe some advice in those areas. What makes a good hook and a good story and a good offer? And I didn't mean to throw all three of them to you all at once, but there's bad ones and good ones. What's the difference?
Well, I'm going to give you the safe one. I mean, you can there's a lot of unique esoteria that can work or not work, but it's much more nuanced. The safe one is you should always start with what is the biggest advantage, benefit, or problem you or your product, when it's deployed in somebody's life, is going to solve. The second is how and why is it going to solve them either better, faster, cheaper, more effectively, more enduringly. The third is how do you prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt? Credibility, reviews, comparability of the people the training of the people, the skill set, the materials you use, the process you use, the guarantee you use. Then how do you basically engage them? And how do you then get them to take action? And that's just a simple process, but frankly, most people don't do it. And a lot of marketing is very self-serving. And there's a concept, Matt, called the so what factor. You read something and you go, so what?
Right.
You want to read something that makes I mean, there's a fascinating, and I use this all the time. There's a Greek mythology about two orators. One is Pericles, the other is Demosthenes, and they're Greek, and Roma's attacking Greece, and they're trying to rally the town to go to war, and they all meet in the town square, and this famous orator speaks for about 4 hours, just silvery tongue, and when he's done, the people say that is the most wonderful, powerful, compelling speech we've ever heard. And then the other person is a lowly, uneducated farmer, but his family's been in Greece for eons, decades, and he loves the Greek democracy. He loves their belief system. He loves their freedoms. He loves the wonderment of the countryside. He loves the family unit, everything they stand for, and he's not comfortable even with eye contact. He's not well educated. He's inhibited, but he musters up the emotion and the energy to speak from his heart. And when he's done, everyone goes, "Let's march." And the key to good marketing is you want people to march.
I think one of the things that I keep working on is the ability to tell the story the right way. It's the story really that helps increase the perceived value of something. If you don't tell the story right, you might even do the opposite. You might deminimize it from not a great story. Do you find that to be a problem a lot of the times, and how do you coach people to think about that?
Well, I mean, storytelling is inherent in making your company, your product, your people preeminent. I love storytelling, and I think if you can do it right, but most people don't tell the story right. You want to tell your origin story. You want to not be afraid to have vulnerabilities. You want to show that you started the business for a reason, and the reason should be that you saw a void, or you saw a market that wasn't being served, or you saw an industry that was shortcutting the consumer. And you have to have a mission or a crusade, and the consumer has to resonate with it. And most people don't even think about that. They're just self-consumed. Let me tell you about us: quality, dependability, and service. Well, that doesn't mean squat to people. You need to basically understand what their definition of value is, and you've got to get them to see you as their advocate, as their champion, different from the maddening crowd of other purveyors that they could choose from. And if you're premium price, which I am, I mean, we get $120,000 a day, so you've got to be able to, make your value pretty clear and evident.
Is there a question that people should ask themselves to get to that when they're trying to get their own kind of story and offer set up?
There is, Matt, but it's going to often be answered incorrectly. The wonder drug phrase in business, and everyone should just really hear me out, it's reason why. What is the reason why I should do business with you instead of somebody else? And you have a business that I can't avoid doing. In other words, if I don't total the car or sell it to somebody as is, I have to fix it. I have to choose somebody to do it. I have to decide who's going to do the best job. And depending on who I am, I'm going to favor either the reputation and the qualitative result, or I'm going to favor the economic result. Depends on what my goal is. But you have to decide what you stand for, who you stand for, why you stand for it, what standing for it should mean in its expression to the consumer, the public, the prospect. And most people are way off the mark in that, frankly.
What if it was is this skill set usable for an individual? Say they're pursuing a career, or a blue collar worker looking for a job. How would we think about this as individuals?
I have many children, and not from all the same marriage, regrettably, but one of them has spent his career in the cosmetic medical facility, injectables, the Botoxes and the like. And he's gotten almost every job he's ever gone for. And he's not gotten it by just saying, okay, here's my resume. He's gotten it by a couple of different devices. One is I taught him to go to the company and say, look, I have a lot of successful history. I've been number one or number two in about every job I've ever had in every market I've ever run, and that's true. But I don't know if I can do it in yours. And before I would even ask you to invest, opportunity costs in a market that's very precious to you and me also invest because you have to revere your side too, my opportunity cost and my ability and expertise in you. I would rather invest first on my end and spend a week or 3 days or whatever you're comfortable with traveling with your current rep or with whomever is managing the territory, meeting your doctors, assessing two things: how they feel about you, your product, your previous or your current rep who's moving or being promoted or quitting, what your advantage, what your disadvantage, and then I can basically be judged. I can tell you what I believe, and you can judge me, and it's a whole different approach than saying, "Hey, here's my resume." Then also, over time, I've convinced him that all things being equal, and he's in a business where you go to medical offices and you try to get an appointment with the doctor, which is very hard. And I convinced him that if he created a book that he sent when he was applying for a job, and the book is titled something like, I can't remember the exact title, but how to get any medical office to eagerly await your visit and the doctor to make quality time for you whenever you are available. If you send that book to a potential employer who wants you to be able to get into offices, it'll probably get you to the top of the heap.
That's good advice. I wonder, how do you go about selecting who you work with? I imagine you must run into frustration of great ideas given that nobody acts on. That must
Yeah,
happen a lot.
yeah, I'll tell you something very interesting. I bifurcate. When I started, I wanted everybody because I thought I can help everyone. Then I realized, I mean, I was in the seminar business and we did $250 million before I quit. And I just quit one day because I'll tell you the good and the bad. I had 100,000 documented success stories, which is pretty interesting, pretty impressive. But I'd introduced the theories to millions of people, not just in seminars and keynotes, radio interviews, magazines, and almost nobody did anything with it. And whenever I did it with a client and I made the client do it, it exploded. I mean, we'd have, thousands of percent growth in a year, 15 months, 18 months, 24 months. And when I put the onus on the other side to do it themselves, they would do almost nothing. There's a very interesting conundrum with me. People can't tell whether I'm a nonlinear thinker or a super logical thinker. And I would probably say the latter more than the former. I just see connections and dots and interrelated opportunities, possibilities. But when I started, I would take everyone. And I would basically be the facilitator, the accountability officer, and I exhausted myself. Today, I reject about 3/4 of the people that are wanting to have a relationship, not because they're not quality people, they're good human beings, husbands, fathers, mothers, employers, but they don't have a prejudice towards action. They aren't monsters of execution. They're wedded to tradition. They're not directable. They're not collaborative. And most of my work, man, I work two ways with people. I either get a one-time retainer and then I share in the profit for a period of time, or if they don't want to share profit, I just get a one-year mentorship and I try to translate and transfer to them over a year my thinking, my methodology. But if I'm participating and they don't really perform, my model is not very profitable going in. It's designed to make a lot of money for both sides. If they don't execute, I have wasted the most precious asset I have at my age: time, opportunity cost, and ability and expertise. So I'm very selective now, and I really like companies that have a lot of moving parts. A lot of leads coming in, a lot of salespeople, a lot of variability, a lot of one-time buyers that don't buy, a lot of prospects that don't convert, a lot of people that buy everything and they have nothing else to sell them, a lot of distribution channels that have variable performance that could be enhanced, a brand that is only being used for one thing, it could be used for others. But I like helping, smaller entrepreneurs. I have an experiment we've been doing for 5 years in Japan where we have about 4,000 SMBs, little companies, and we meet twice a month and I give them one big idea and about a 10% do anything. But yeah, the majority, Woody Allen had a really great quote, and I cite it a lot. There's 3 quotes I cite a lot. One is, "It's yours to lose." It's funny. People, they talk all the time about wanting greater growth, profitability, success, prosperity, enterprise value. But when push comes to shove and they are exposed to the actions and the strategies that will do it, most of them, frankly, they default towards status quo. It's very interesting. And, it's as interesting. So Tony teaches in his very, very impressive, he's called Business Mastery 1. It's his big It's expensive. It's like $10 or so $1,000 for the entry level. He teaches for one full day, my 3-way to grow business model, which is an infallible way to grow any business, particularly the bottom line, by orders of magnitude, safely, no investment, just by doing things differently, blows people's mind. They're all excited. And then I have done a couple times his advanced program where people who went to that, learn that 3 ways, come to learn more advanced methodology. And I asked them, how many of you were blown away with the 3-way to grow business model, which, by the way, as you increase the number of buyers or prospects or clients, you increase the size of the transaction ethically, and thus the profit each transaction brings you. You increase the frequency of purchase if you have something that they can buy or many things they can buy. And if you don't, you increase the utility value, meaning you find other ethical complementary ways you can monetize the relationship. And when you do that, it blows up. It multiplies top line, but it increases bottom line many times more. And it's infallible. It doesn't really cost you any more. It just requires you to do things differently. And this advanced program that people come to like about a year after they've gone to the regular one where they learn this, I ask people how many were blown away by, there's like 1,000 people, how many were blown away by the 10, 10, 10? Everyone raises their hand. They're jubilant. It's so cool. It's like it's business growth on steroids with no risk and investment. Then I ask, honest to God, before I go forward, how many of you did anything with it? Be honest. And he's got a high-performing group, 15%,
Out of the
85%.
high-performing group.
Yeah, and you're there to learn more things they're not going to do. It's just really interesting. So Woody Allen said that 80% of success is showing up. The other quote I like is, it's yours to lose. The other is, I think you have to be your own hostage negotiator because you're holding yourself hostage as far as growth. I mean, today there's an enormous number, Matt, of generic competitors, but there's a very small number of viable competitors if you understand the factors, forces, and principles that are available to you.
It's the same principles you deal with within a company too. You've got 15% to take the action, or I call it the 20, right? The 20 that will, and the 60 you got to motivate, and the other 20 that just won't do it no matter what. So it's those 60 in the middle that we kind of manage, right? And the other 20 do it on their own, and the other 20 you want to move on from. But it's interesting, same kind of principles that you see.
If you look at it analytically on paper or on your computer, if you get those 60% to be just 10% better in 3 or 4 areas, the impact it has on performance, productivity, profitability is unimaginable, and it doesn't require more money. It requires getting them continuously to do things differently.
That's right. And I think that leads into like my next question that I wanted to ask you about. And one of the things I noticed that you dig into is you find leverage.
Yep.
And emphasize the importance of it. So how do you get businesses to see the areas of leverage? And it seems to me like you see it right away. Is that because you're an outsider? And well, of course, the breadth of your experience, but you're an outsider. You're not boxed into a predisposition thinking.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you a story, and it's very old. And when I first learned it, everybody knew the story. People don't today. But I'll start with the story, then I'll tell you the implication. Here's the story. Man marries a wonderful woman, have a great life, 3 really beautiful children. Every year at Christmas time, family gets together at the wife's mother's home, and the whole family's there, and they're having Christmas dinner. And her mother makes a roast, and she starts by taking the raw roast, and she lops off the 2 ends and puts it in a pan and then bakes it.
I know this story. That's great.
Everyone doesn't. This goes on year 1. This goes on year 2, 3. Find a guy is curious as hell. Why in the heck is your mom lopping off the end of the roast? And he asked her, and she goes, "That's because my mother did it." And as luck would have it, the grandmother is still alive and is in the by the fireplace. And he goes up and he asks her, "Why in the world did you lop off the end of the roast?" And her answer is very fascinating. She goes, "When we moved here from the old country, we had no money, and we got the tiniest little apartment with the tiniest little oven, And even the smallest roast would never fit in. So we had to do it just so it would fit in a pan that we could roast. So he started cutting off the edge for a reason. The mother started cutting it off for no reason other than she modeled her mother, and same thing with the daughter. So now to answer your question, when I got started, I was an accidental tourist in business. I would never recommend what I'm going to tell you, but I got married at 18. Don't recommend it. I had 2 children at 20. Definitely don't recommend it. I had the need of somebody at 40. I mean, at 40, at 20, and nobody gave a crap. And excuse me for my vulgarity, but nobody cared. I had to basically eat what I killed. Nobody gave me a salary. I worked with a lot of crazy but very impressive entrepreneurs, and they would give me participation on the revenue I generated. Eat what you kill. But they didn't care if I worked 1 minute or 12 hours. If I performed, I earned. If I didn't, they didn't. So I always had 3 to 5 things I did concurrently because I had to feed my family, irrespective of whether something paid off or not. And after about 10 different activities, which fortunately, Matt, we're never in the same industry, I realized that people in one industry don't think the same, they don't market the same, their strategies aren't the same, business model aren't the same, and that many of them follow the herd and cut off the roast. And what they do is not the highest, the best, the most profitable, the fastest, the least exposed. It's the worst. It's the suboptimal. And I started introducing common as dirt success approaches from previous industries that I'd been involved in to industries I was now involved in. I started with one, then I started creating hybrids, and that's how the Icy Out blew up. They went from 20,000 to multi-million in 15 months. That's how Entrepreneur grew 900% in about 9 months. That's how the gold company that I helped when I was younger went from 300,000 to $500 million in aggregate sales in 18 months. And everyone thought I was a genius, and I'm bright. I acknowledge that, but I was really the one-eyed man in the land of the blind. So I took it seriously, and I wanted to learn everything I could about every industry I could, and I wanted to figure out what the core essence, the driving methodologies that could be translated, adapted, adopted, extrapolated. And then I was on a mission now to go talk to you about leverage. Sometime earlier in my career, I realized that what I did was work on the geometry of the business instead of being content with incremental growth. And then I created the concept of someone becoming an exponential entrepreneur, where I realized you can do things 2 ways. You can do it in the incremental zone, where you're content with very slow, small progress, or you can bypass that and operate in the exponential zone. And everything you do can be done either incrementally or exponentially. And I used to, when I did seminars, I used to demonstrate it when I did them. I would have somebody come on stage and shake hands with me. And the typical shake hand is like this, right? I can't do it well because we're here. But then I'd have them do that, and I'd look at the audience and say, is that memorable? Is that significant? And they'd say, no. Then I'd say, let's do it again. And I would, instead of doing that, I would cup their hand like that for 1 minute and then stop and say, is that more memorable? They'd say, yes. Then I'd say, one time, and I'd do it one more time, cup the hand and put a hand on the shoulder. Now, 10% of the people are offended by that. 90%, it's very endearing. And I'd show them, I'd say, it took the same amount of time, effort. Then I'd say, how many people in the room, and I'm sorry for dominating, I'll shut up in a minute, but you got me on the roll. I'd say, how many people in the room use the telephone to generate any facet of their business? Raise your hand. And about half. I'd say, okay, how many ever call somebody that is important and get either a gatekeeper or voicemail? And it's like everybody. And I said, well, if you know that 90% of the probability is you're going to get that, and you go, Matt, it's Jay Abraham, and I want to help your company, and I think I can add a lot more profit, and I would like to have an appointment with you. Why would you do that unprepared if you know that probability and outcome is you're going to get a voicemail, you're going to get a gatekeeper? So why don't you prepare a message that is so damn strategic that it begs somebody to respond? And if you're going to call again, it just build on it. But that's why I say I think I'm a very super logical thinker, Matt.
Yeah, very much so. And some of that is the first exposure I had to you watching those seminars on VHS tapes is how I first got your message. Yeah. So, a little bit about your strategy of preeminence, because I think it's very helpful. If we could dive into that a little bit, why is that so important?
Well, it's interesting. I'll give you the origin and then I'll tell you the answer to the why. The origin is I had a client who taught me more than I taught them. They were the number one a newsletter and health investment firm in their field until they sold, and they sold for $650 million 20 years ago. So it's a lot of money. And they were 3 times larger and they were about 5 times more profitable than their closest competitor. And they were a client of mine, but they were different animals. Everyone there was on a mission, a crusade. Everyone there had a different vibe. It was very appealing, very contagious. They had higher response rates, higher retention rates, higher cross-selling rates, and I decided rather than making money from them, I wanted to learn their methodology because the guy that ran it was a former partner at Bain, and he was a very deep thinker. So I traded them $500,000 of my time for the chance to spend a week interviewing the man I'm talking about, the guy that ran it, and all the team members to see if they conformed to what he said. And I had about 1,000 pages of notes, and I distilled it into a thesis that I called the Strategy of Preeminence. And what it's all about is being seen in your market as the only viable choice, the most trusted advisor for life and having no comparability to anybody else. And it has many facets. And when I used to teach it, and even if you want, we have a challenge we did one time for it. I think it was 3 or 5 days, and we don't do anything with it. I'll be happy to give you the videos, and you can put it in on your show notes, or you can put it on your website, whatever you
That would
want.
be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the short. I'm not going to give you the 2-hour version. The short is, number one, you got to fall in love not with the business you're in, not with the industry you're in, not with being the fastest growing company in your world, not with getting the most toys, not with having the most wealth, but you want to fall in love with the clients you serve, and you want to live in a mindset where you see your product or service at work in their life and the transformatic effect it has. And I use the word clients because if you're going to be an advisor, you don't call them customers. If you look up the Webster's dictionary definition of a customer, it's somebody who buys a commodity or a service. So from the very technical standpoint, if I call you a customer, what I'm saying subliminally is I am not relevant beyond just being a commodity. I have no unique value. I want to be just like everybody else and have no distinction. A client, on the other hand, if you look up Webster's dictionary definition, Matt, it's somebody who is under the care, the protection, the well-being. It has a fiduciary connotation to it. So you want to basically worry about your clients and you want to live for them, and you want to see in your case, you'd say, okay, if they're going to keep that car is going to look like brand new and run, maybe not perfectly if it's not mechanically sound in the first place, but it's going to be the very best job anyone would do, and it's going to be as masterful as we can possibly perform, and they're going to be happier with us than they could be with anybody else. They're going to sell the car because they're worried about it. They're going to get the most price because it's going to be in the best possible uh whatever you call it, rehabilitated condition. But there's 3 gradients of clients. The first gradient you're going to fall in love with are the people who pay you. But the other 2 are the people you pay, your team members, as well as your advisors and your vendors. And you want them to be collaborative. You want to be in this for the long haul. You want everybody to be that feel like they're on a mission and a crusade in behalf of the client. So that's the first part. The second is you have a moral obligation and a responsibility to tell them the truth, not just to sell them what they'll buy, but to tell them what they should buy. And that can mean buying less than they want to, or more than they want to, or better combinations than they want to, because you have a moral responsibility to tell them what decision is going to be in their best interest. They don't necessarily have to exercise it, but you have to have integrity. The next thing is you have to be able to put into words for people what they really want to get closer to or away from. And this is very hard for people, but and I don't know how our timeline. I've got a mechanism I can share, but it takes about 3 or 4 minutes to know how to do that. So if you want me to, I'll be happy to. If not, I can.
Sure, let's do it.
So we created years ago a concept called the mind of the market. It's also called the Amazon.com School of Marketing. And what it means is this: most people, when they're trying to market or they're trying to sell somebody or they have a sales script or they have an interaction, they use phrases that they feel will compel them, but it's intuitive, it's conjecture, it isn't empirically validated, tested, compared against anything else. In truth, if you can transcend the superficial veneer of people and you can penetrate below the deflectors, you will own mind share. How do you do that? Well, you take the subject of your company, your product, your service, and you go to Amazon, and depending on what it is, and Amazon is a starting point, but depends on what it is, you go and see all the books on that subject, and you look at the titles, the subtitles, first of all, and the chapter titles, because most books sell more because of that than they do the content, and that means these are phrases that resonate with the consumer at a deep subliminal level. Then, this is the important point, you go to all the reviews of the books and you go to the fives and zeros. Now, fives are great, zeros are horrible. And sometimes you have to go to other books that have lots of zeros and ones, because when people are passionate, Matt, and think about this with yourself, your team, your management, your family, your kids, when you're really passionate, positively or negative, when you're thrilled or when you're angry, your subconscious overrides your conscious, and it says things in, if you back out the vulgarity, when you don't go FF or, things that are nasty, your mind articulates in a very sinewy, very efficient, very powerful graphic imagery way, which it doesn't normally do when you are just talking. So those are the words that your subconscious will really resonate. Now, if what you sell, like you, I don't know that you have a product in your business, Matt, that you'd go to a book, although there might be a book on it, but I think that you would be better off going to discussion groups, going to your competitors and looking at their positive and negative reviews, going to your own and looking. And then what you do, you get all these positive, all these negative, you get the titles if they're books, you get the subtitles, and you get the chapter titles. You put the chapter and the subtitles in a group, you put the positives in a group, you put the negatives in a group, and now you combine them in the highest in a hierarchy. So the 80-20, they might be said a little differently, but 80% are going to be the same 5 or 10, and you have now the 80%, and now you can communicate with your target audience in language that not just they understand, but their subconscious understands. And you can say, I know what you want, it's this. I know what you don't want, it's this. And all of a sudden, your company is the only one that is connecting at a deep, deep subliminal level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. In fact, we recently did an exercise where we looked at our own reviews and looked at, what was the makeup of the best reviews and what was the makeup of the worst. And crazy enough, the same three things in the same order were the source of praise and the source of criticism. That gave us the keys to success. From the customer's point of view, it either made us or broke us in each of the three areas, and they were exactly the same, whether praise or criticism.
So if you do that just for you personally, this is a piece of this advice is worth what you're paying for. It's to do it. If you go and do that, not just with your own, but with all your competitors, you go to every discussion group on good and bad, bad repair shops, and you don't just do it in your city. You do it every major city where there's going to be positive, negative reviews, and you consolidate it, and then you get the language patterns. In any advertising you do, you test it and how your people talk to somebody when they're calling you and trying to get a quote. You test it and how you deal with the agents and the adjusters. You test it in how you follow up to get reviews afterwards. You test it in your pre and your post selling communication. I will promise you it will produce multiplied results.
That's awesome. I'm going to take that advice for sure. One thing that I wanted to ask you about, well, before we wrap it up here, you talk about a lot of times you're competing against fear and apathy more than a competitor even. Why is that the case, and how do you think about the emotional equation?
I told you I've held 350 or so world-class A caliber experts. None of them came to me for help with their methodology, but I had to learn their methodology in order to help them command more preeminence, more higher pricing, more delineation against everyone else. So I have a very profound understanding of a lot of things. I'm dangerous. I can't operate a business, but I can multiply a business if you run it. But the point I was going to make is there are a lot of soft skills that have enormous upside that people don't understand, and one of them, to go to your question, is Stephen M.R. Covey, who is the son of Stephen R. Covey of Seven Habits. And Stephen M.R., the son, who's a little younger than me, is the world authority on business trust building. And he says most people think they command great trust when in fact they don't. He's got 13 characteristics that if you can really manifest and personify them in an authentic way, in a genuine way that is an integral part of your authenticity, it will multiply your result up to 300%. That goes for selling, that goes for team engagement, follow through, it goes for shortening sales cycle, it goes for all kinds of things. So in answer to your question, people are afraid they are going to make a bad decision. They don't trust many companies to have their best interests at heart. And I left something out of preeminence. When you are preeminent, you have an obligation, and it's a very multifaceted one. One, Matt, is anytime you interact with anybody for any reason, any amount of time, you have the obligation, the responsibility, the privilege of making them better off because you were in their life. Secondly, you want to make sure that you tell them, as I said, what's in their best interest. And trust comes from the sense that you have their best interests at heart, not yours. People are silently begging to be led. They really are. Everyone is. You are, I am. But the caveat is we only want to be led by somebody that we genuinely feel has our best interest at heart, not their own. And that's the boogaboo. Most people today are so concerned with self-interest. I always try, and it's, if you were my client, I would spend 4 hours just learning your origin story. I'd learn how you got there. I'd learn your values. I'd learn your belief systems. I'd learn why and how you do things, how they're doing, what you're doing, why you're doing it, all these things before I'd ever try to even advise you, because I can't advise you if I don't fully appreciate, understand, and respect you.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. And I got to tell you, Jay, like the value of what you say throughout this is so good. Like, I'm in this conversation. I'm going to probably listen to this thing a few times because you threw so many great ideas and things that go really quickly. I'm just expressing appreciation for it.
No, and that's great. So, but you're a very humble man, and you've accomplished an enormous amount. And I had the very good privilege of spending 2 hours with you and some of your team members a couple of weeks ago, and I was vividly impressed with your humility, your authenticity, and your commitment to the betterment of the market you serve. And I don't believe most people really live there. They don't walk their talk.
Yeah, you have to. It has to be authentic. Jay, how long will you keep doing this? Like I hope for a long time for the sake of those that you help, but
I'll tell you something that's interesting. I never thought I'd still be doing this, but I never developed any hobbies. I have, as you can tell, a lot of energy. I have a knowledge base that is very eerie. And what I do is very unique. I can teach people my generic, my theoretical constructs, but where my strength comes in is I've really done this for 50 years. So I have an empirical, real world, front line of capitalism understanding. And I got to tell you, I don't do one thing all the time. I think I would get very tired. I don't run a business. I mean, I can't run a business. I'm not a good operator. I'm a mad scientist. But every day in my life is discovery. Every day of my life is experimentation. Every day of my life is diversity. If you thrive on growth, if you thrive on discovery, if you thrive on exploring the human condition, it's the perfect way to live a life. I mean, I've not really concerned myself with becoming a billionaire. I've concerned myself with learning everything I could about everything I could and trying to really understand how different things work and why they work and why people allow them to work less than they should. And I still enjoy it. I don't enjoy everybody anymore. I don't enjoy people who want intellectual entertainment. I don't enjoy people that are focused on making money over creating value. And I definitely don't like people who don't execute, but I still have a good time, Matt.
That's awesome. Final question. We're all about championing people. And so giving you the opportunity, if there's a person in your life you'd like to champion right now and why?
I have had a wonderful opportunity to impact a lot of people I never would have expected. If somebody who's genuinely struggling comes into my life, we don't just patronize them. I have a body of work to die for. I mean, I've got an enormous amount of IP that I've created over my life, and I don't even try to sell it. We just freely gift it to people most of the time. So I went and I bought some clothes a couple of weeks ago at a suit place, and the guy was there, but he really wanted to be an entrepreneur. We started talking, and he was heartfelt, and he really didn't have a lot of money, and he was trying to get started. And I bought him, I don't know, $50,000 of my materials because I don't do anything with them except I share them with clients. And I like being a benefactor. I like being a catalyst of possibilities. And I'll tell you one thing that's a little bit, you may not admire this, but it's true. Did you ever see the movie Animal House?
Yes.
Do you remember Dean Wormer put the fraternity on double secret probation?
Yep.
So in my life, a lot of people are on double secret probation, but it's a benign one. I want to see if you take a horse to water, will they drink? So I will gift people things that are invaluable. And we used to sell our home studies for $5,000 to $15,000, and I may give somebody a bunch of them, and I want to see if they'll do anything with it. And sadly, as I said, most people don't. When we did our expense seminars, they were 15, 20, 25, 30,000. I had people that I had empathy for, and I would buy them gratis attendance. And I would also extend to some of my colleagues, and they would be the ones that would be sitting in the hall most of the time. They wouldn't be in the room. It's not annoying. It's just fascinating to observe how people, how they speak that they want one thing, but their actions really belie that, Matt.
Yeah. I can see the frustration in that. And it might be something to the whole, they got it for free. That's why they didn't appreciate it maybe too.
Value wasn't there, which is really tragic.
Yeah. Jay, thanks so much for taking the time today. Really enjoyed this. I know I'm going to listen to it a few times and hope the audience found it as beneficial as I did. I'm sure they did.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want more PodCrash in your life, which of course you do, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch you next time.